Welcome back to another episode of the SBS podcast. My name is Ross, and joined with me as always are my co-hosts Kyle and Keon. The return of college football is finally upon us, so today we want to cover what we saw and learned in Week 0, talk a little NFL as Dorian Thompson-Robinson makes the official Browns 53-man roster. We'll certainly make mention of Desmond Howard's rather bold prediction of what may lie ahead for Chip Kelly in Columbus with the Buckeyes. And then last but certainly not least, we are talking game week. It is finally time to talk UCLA versus Hawaii and how we think this one is going to play out. That's all coming up right here on the SBS podcast. All right. Now that is how you kick off a college football season, assuming you guys enjoyed Florida State, Georgia Tech as much as I did.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice game to open it up with in Dublin, Ireland. I watched some of the Pat McAfee.
He was getting after it looked like out there.
Him and Nick Saban.
Pardon my take made mention of that this morning. What would you expect in that setup?
I loved it. I think we need more stuff like that in college football.
His whole shtick is kind of talking like he's half drunk, just with how he
naturally,
how he is stylistically, and then they literally put him in an Irish pub for Week 0 to kick off the season.
And what do you expect to happen?
Right?
Yeah,
I loved it. It was great.
I think the Pat McAfee Nick Saban combo on College Game Day is just going to be so good this year. I mean, actual mind of the game that Nick Saban's got, and then you just combine that with the opposite side of the energy with Pat McAfee. I think it's going to be absolutely fireworks in the morning on Saturday morning.
So Saban is full-time on College Game Day?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Dude, there was this part where they were giving their predictions for the season on who's going to be the national championship.
I saw that.
Everybody's saying Georgia, and there's this part where Nick Saban says Georgia, and then Pat McAfee turns to him, looks him dead in the eye, and just starts barking.
Wait, Saban said Georgia or Bama?
No, Saban said Georgia.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So, Keon, you were a fan of the game, but you weren't a fan of the FSU band.
No. Oh, my God. I was in Palm Springs. I had a pretty long night the night before, so I wake up at 9 a.m. just because I'm fired up to watch some college football. And from 9 a.m. to noon, I'm just hearing I'm hungover, I'm on the couch, everybody at the Airbnb's asleep, and I'm just hearing the FSU war band music, and I hate every moment of it.
Has it always been that extreme?
I don't think the song has changed. I just think they played it the whole game.
That's what I mean. The frequency of them playing it. I always knew that they abused it and that it was most plays. I didn't know it was literally almost every
play.
If I was a first time the Irish people that attended the game, they're probably like, "What is this?"
Yeah, I was just about to say, if you were just a normal Irish lad showing up to the game, and you're probably like, "What is this song that they're just playing every single down of the entire game?"
Having said that, I feel like in Europe, having constant obnoxious noise at sporting events is kind of like their wheelhouse.
Yeah,
that's true too.
Well, that's another thing. Where the players used to that, but
what do they call vuvuzelas in Ireland?
FSU fans.
Yeah, right. There you go. Also, I want to talk about Haynes King. Is that his name? Haynes King, the quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
That dude's a dog. I actually can't wait to watch Georgia Tech this year. I mean,
they look good.
There is something that gets my piss hot. There's nothing that gets me more fired up to watch a team than a tall, kind of goofy, lanky-looking quarterback that runs the rock harder than anyone on the offense. If you're on that team, that's got to get you so fired up.
The only thing I have to say about Haynes King was on a couple of the handoffs, he looked a little shaky, and it's the first game of the season. There's growing pains with that, and you're flying across the pond. But that's the only thing. In an ACC where you have, I don't think the ACC's the best conference. I think that's not a hot take, but I think if he just secures those handoffs a little more, I think he almost fumbled it a couple times.
It was a bunch of read options. He was pulling them late. Also,
Haynes King needs a deal with what's that Tidy Whitey brand? Is that Haynes? Yeah, Haynes King. Give him a deal.
The age of NIL, Tidy Whitey deals for college athletes. Kyle, I feel like you'll attest to this. Haynes King kind of reminded. Speaking of tall, lanky quarterbacks that run harder than they should, what quarterback reminds you of that description? You got one guess. You got to think the.
Can you give me a hint at least?
21st century. Which most likely means that it was not in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Starts with a what?
It's Patrick Callan.
Yeah. I was going to say starts with a P.
That kid got me fired up because I felt like I was watching Patrick Cowan against USC in 06.
Yeah.
And speaking of Patrick Cowan, talk about a guy that needs to come on the damn SBS show. That is such an obvious no-brainer. He's still around the program. I saw that he spoke to the team at Wasserman like maybe last year. He and Eric McNeil, they're kind of a Siamese twin because they're on my Mount Rushmore of coming on the show. And if I'm going to have one of them on, both of them need to come on so we can do kind of like a 13-9 special episode where we like rewatch the game. But
that would be epic.
That'd be sweet.
Speaking of Mount Rushmore, that's one of my 4, those 2. I know it's kind of cheating, but that's one of my 4. I know we're kind of taking one also, again, out of Pardon My Takes book, but I'm kind of dipping into the Mount Rushmore thing. What are the remaining 3? At least, what's your 4?
My 4, I'm going to, for the sake of knocking off some big names, I think Troy Aikman would be awesome.
Yeah.
Do they need to be doable and realistic?
I was taking the initiative of no.
Okay.
They don't.
I think we've already accomplished one. I think Jonathan Franklin is a no-brainer.
Frank.
Okay, we'll allow creative liberties for this.
Okay.
I'm going to keep mine a little realistic with maybe one long shot. I've got my long shot as Lonzo Ball.
Oh, I had him on my list as well.
Although I think there's enough mutual friends there that we might be able to pull that off.
Yeah, my long shot, and this is just a personal hero of mine, would be Chase Utley.
Okay. That'd be cool.
I'd take Chase Utley. I'd take it back.
Hey,
that'd be good.
Kyle, All-American. Can you make that happen, brother?
Chase Utley came around the program my freshman year once.
That sounds so promising.
He did not really come around very often, but I'm sure we can make anything happen with the
that
SBS
was your
podcast.
Was that your All-American year, though? So he remembers you as an All-American?
That's true.
Yeah, that's exactly how he remembers me.
My 3rd, I've got DTR.
I had him on my list as well.
Okay, fuck. The only reason why I think that one's doable is because I don't know how many of the listeners are followers of the Instagram. If you don't, that's crazy. How'd
you even get here?
Right? Yeah. Find out
our link tree.
When I posted that photo of Dorian holding up the SBS shirt that said, had the Secret Bruin Society on the back, that was my sister that got that picture. She saw him on the sideline, and she was sitting right next to me in the Washington State game last year. Such a random game for him. It was like 100 degrees against Washington State. I don't know why he was there. She ran down with the shirt. She's like, Ross, give me your shirt. I know that I can get a photo of him holding it. And I'm like, good luck. She runs down to the den. And then I kind of lose sight of her, and she comes back holding her phone with the photo of his giant face, just holding with a giant smile the SBS shirt. I'm like, oh, my God.
Wow, that's so sweet.
So because of that specific moment – oh, wait, I forgot to mention an important detail. When she kind of sold him on the idea of taking the photo, she goes, hey, my brother runs this Instagram page, and could you take a picture with the shirt? He saw the name. He goes – oh, I know what that is. I know SBS.
Hell yeah.
So,
hell yeah.
I don't know if I consider DTR a long shot. I think he maybe kind of knows at the gram. He's interacted with it a few times.
I was going to say a realistic big name for me would be Drew Holiday. I've golfed with him before. When I was working at women's basketball, his sister played for UCLA women's basketball. So I could reach out. So but that's a big name.
What if we're just way overselling and we go 0 for like 16 on these?
We don't get anyone. I'm gonna make it a point. My goal is to get Lorenzo Mata on this show.
That's a great one.
That episode would go so unbelievably hard for like OG basketball fans. That was the blueprint of the Howland player. Was Lorenzo Mata Real.
That is my mom's favorite UCLA basketball player, probably of all time. So that would be a good one.
I was going to say
he's got good connects. He's really tight with Hawkes. He's really tight with the Hawkes family.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That checks out.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say Jordan Farmar would be he went to my high school. Have a lot of mutuals in a few generations above us, obviously, but. Yeah.
What's he up to these days?
I think he's just working. I think he's just a normal Joe. He's one of us. Yeah. He had a few rings with the Lakers.
My 4th, before we move on from Mount Rushmore, which has maybe carried on for too long now, Jeff Strand.
Yes.
I've got Jeff Strand, and that is probably my number 1 out of the other 3 that I've mentioned. I want to know what happened. I want to know if we can bring him back, and if he's not willing to come back or if that just can't be arranged, can I fill those shoes for him? Because I'm willing to do it. I'll wear the sweater vest. I'll put on the paperboy hat. Sign me up. I don't know if the athletic department knows of this podcast, but if they're listening, I'm
bring
right
it
here.
back. Bring
Ross,
back Jeff.
Ross, there's no UCLA fan that I think could do a better job at that job than you.
There we go.
Fair. All right, switching gears a bit. Desmond Howard made some. I don't even know if it was a headline. It might have just been a tweet that I saw that I kind of latched onto, but it really grabbed my attention. And that's Desmond Howard prophesizing. Is that a word? Prophetizing?
Yeah, prophesizing. You got it.
Something like that.
Prophesizing that Chip Kelly could one day be the successor to Ryan Day, given that he may or may not be on the hot seat. Which I agree with Desmond that he is. I think if they don't beat if they don't beat Michigan this year,
I agree,
and they don't at least make the title game, I think that they're going to be calling for Ryan Day's head.
Yep.
Having said that, if Chip Kelly does indeed get that position and becomes head coach of Ohio State, that will be all the confirmation I need to know that there is no moral balance or guiding light in this universe and that we are just alone floating in this black, empty cosmic space.
Chip Kelly failing his way into the head coaching job of Ohio State.
But yeah, and here's the reason why it's so upsetting to like just hear the prospect of that happening. It's because if that does happen, that could, I hate to say it, that could work out. I think he could work out as their head coach and actually maybe see some success because I think football is just such a reality and it's so like undying in the state of Ohio that you can get away as head coach with having a hideous personality.
Yeah.
Which he does have.
Well, and I think he would have the roster and all the 5-star talent in the world to go along with,
That's what I mean. He's not going to have to go into who is he going to have to win over to give money to the Ohio State program? He's not going to have to get in front of donors and try to put money together or even recruit, really. The money, I mean, NIL in Ohio just sprouts from the soil in Columbus.
Right. And recruits are just going to flock to him. He didn't even need to do anything.
Well, he's just going to have his peons wave some cash in front of some high schoolers or some transfer portal guys and then he's got a roster to just basically, it's just books and ball after that.
Yeah,
books and ball.
And in Ohio State, there's probably more ball than books.
I don't know, man. Chip swore by books and ball during his time in Westwood, and it went swimmingly, man.
Clearly,
as long as he doesn't stick any quarterbacks in at kick return, I think that could work out. As long as he can like hold himself back from any like obscene projects like that, I say that works out. I don't know.
Was that Yankoff he had last year?
It was.
That was. Who also just made an NFL roster.
Let's hear it for
shout out to
Colson Yankoff.
I mean, when I bring that up, it is no knock on Colson. Colson came in as a quarterback, and he did not have the build of a kick returner. It was just one of the weirdest decisions that I've ever seen from a head coach outside of like Mario Cristobal.
While you had Keegan Jones on the sideline.
That's what I'm saying. And like, why are you putting Colson in that position? Like, you're putting him in such a tough position because now he's going to get the flack when he inevitably just gets cracked and fumbles, which he did against Cal. I don't want to get too deep into this.
No.
But clearly this has been lingering with my brain.
But do we want to use that as a nice transition into speaking about some NFL Bruins that may have been in the news as the 53-man roster just dropped today?
Let's talk NFL. Dorian Thompson-Robinson making the Browns' 53-man roster to join a quarterback room, which it's not final because there could be some trades to take place. But right now, a projected quarterback room is Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah. What a three.
What I would give to be in that quarterback room
to hear on the wall there.
To hear those three spitting ideas off one another.
Have you guys seen Jameis's preseason hype videos that he comes out with? I just crack up. Oh my god! I just crack up at the fact that this dude is just going off like it's a Super Bowl pregame in his
team talks. Yeah,
and it's week 3 of 2024 preseason.
No, dude, he's the man.
I would pay money for UCLA to bring on Jameis Winston just solely as like a culture coach,
spiritual guy.
Exactly.
Yes, I think this is great for Dorian.
Yeah,
I mean this move. I'd love to see him kind of like see the same trajectory that maybe Caleb Love got in Green Bay. And maybe see kind of like a new standard in the NFL where teams kind of invest into these developmental quarterbacks that they draft. I mean, this would be his second year with the Browns. Maybe give him 3 years to sit. Watson, I don't think has. I mean, it's just a sketchy situation all around with him, with his health, the money at stake, his off the field issues. I think kind of keeping Dorian in that like long-term project might actually work out for the Browns, but also I think be a huge plus for Dorian because his style of play, dude, he throws the ball so damn hard. I think he had the second highest velocity in his quarterback class. Mm-hmm. And also just his nature of play. He's a very aggressive athlete, whether it be running the football or throwing it. I don't think that translates well to, your first couple of years in the league trying to make it as a quarterback. We saw that last year for the most part when he got playing time. I think you give him 3 years sitting and then have him make that step. I think that could really work out for him.
The only pushback I would have against that would be something similar to a Brett Hundley situation in Green Bay.
That's what I was just about to say, Keon.
How long was he on the bench for Green Bay?
Like 4 years.
4 years.
No way. I don't believe that.
Something like that.
I'm
I can look it up. Yeah,
pulling it up. It was his third year.
Okay, 3
with the Packers when. Ironically enough, Anthony Barr knocked Aaron Rodgers out of the game, which gave Brett his first start in 2017. So that was
there we go, Bruins.
Or no, that would have that would have been his third year. Yeah. So I don't know.
Also go over depth chart.
No. Also on a side note, Quentin Lake.
Yes,
he's
Q Lake
today breaking named team captain on the Rams defense.
Got a C on his jersey.
Yeah, look at that, man. I mean, Q Lake. He was another guy that I feel like. Early in his career at UCLA, he wasn't exactly jumping off the screen at you, but come senior year, that guy was an absolute dog. Yeah. Stoked to see Quentin making some noise in the league.
Staying local, too, which is nice. Him and Josh Kelly, both local. Am I?
Yep. Josh Kelly is still with the Chargers? No longer on the Chargers, unfortunately. He ended up... Where'd Josh Kelly end up?
Josh Kelly... He's with the Giants. New York Giants.
Josh Kelly's with the Giants now.
All right. Thanks again for listening. Wanted to take a quick break in the action to plug the official SBS watch party for the UCLA-Hawaii game this Saturday at the Venice Beach Bar and Kitchen. Starting at 4 p.m., all upstairs TVs and audio will be reserved for the Bruins, and the turnout is expected to be quite large. So come early, wear blue, and join the SBS gang in watching the Bruins smack the Warriors with an ocean view. We'll see you there, and go Bruins. Last side note before we switch gears into talking about the upcoming week with the Bruins and its matchup with Hawaii. Other breaking news with UCLA as more of like an institution. They have hired Stephanie London Krogius as, get this, Executive Senior Associate Athletic Director / Chief Development Officer.
That's one long title.
This is according to Pete Thames.
Right.
This is a fundraising role to help UCLA adapt to a new era where there is a priority on raising money for the athletic department. What was her prior experience, Keon? I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, she was over at Arizona State. She was at UC Irvine. She was the chief revenue officer of USA Water Polo. So she's kind of been everywhere with a variety of experiences.
But what was her last experience though? Because that's what jumped out at me. It was like she's coming from like a hospital.
Oh, yeah, yes, Providence, St. John's.
Yeah, look, I don't know the first thing about high-level fundraising, so I'm just going to, like, take a back seat on this. But when I first saw, like, this headline, I'm like, oh, my God, this is exactly what we needed to do. And then the next sentence was she comes over from, like St. Jude's. Yeah. And I was like, okay. At least it's a step in the right direction. But, hey, if this works out, I mean, this is a good sign. At face value, UCLA just dedicated a position to raising NIL funds, and I think that's a net positive.
Yeah, especially in the Big Ten where you have these major collectives. We mentioned Ohio State earlier. You have USC, Oregon, obviously everybody knows, but Michigan. Yeah. So it's good to take a step in that direction.
Yep. Let's switch over to what came out yesterday. UCLA's two-deep depth chart was released for the upcoming 2024 season. Not a lot of surprises except for one that totally jumped out off the page, and that is Logan Loya, last year's leading receiver for UCLA, and had scored the most touchdowns, I want to say. Yeah. He is now taking he's second on the depth chart to Rico Flores. And, I mean, look, I want to be excited for Rico because I think last year he was second. He was
at Notre Dame.
Second.
He was their second top receiver at Notre Dame. But is this not kind of like a football sin too? I got to imagine Logan's like a fifth-year senior, fourth-year senior. He's been with the program
senior, yep.
Yeah, he's been with the program forever. He absolutely balled for the Bruins last year, and then unless Rico just absolutely was lights out in practice, or if Logan was just kind of slacking. But I struggled to believe that, and I was pretty surprised to see that is the move. But I guess you kind of take these two-man depth charts with a grain of salt, I would say. And also, as we all know, receiver is a pretty rotational position, so it's not like he's going to not be seeing the field. But I was just very surprised to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it because we've talked about this between the three of us before, but we're so fired up about this receiver room. And if this is actually getting wide receiver one from merit,
Strictly
off of
merit-based,
off of the practices. And Ross and I and Kyle, we've all been to a practice. We've seen him catch some pretty great balls.
Been to a few.
But yeah, so I'm excited about it because I think then it'll actually translate onto the field. Hopefully,
I'm a little skeptical. I know, Ross, you mentioned that receivers are a very rotational position, but I mean, I'm sure there was some discussion between Foster and Logan and the other coaches. Hey, you're gonna obviously see the field, but just coming out in a depth chart and seeing your name second and as a redshirt senior to a sophomore that just transferred in, as you mentioned, he's been at UCLA,
a transfer sophomore at that,
a transfer sophomore, correct? Like, that's got to sit with Logan like some type of way. I mean, I wouldn't sit right with me coming off a season where I was a leading receiver and established that connection with Garber. So I'm sure it's not going to be a huge deal as we get weeks into the season, but it was something that definitely caught my eye as a little bit surprising, and I don't think it would have sit right with Logan, but is what it is.
Hey, if he plays with a chip on his shoulder, it could only be a positive for the Bruins. Alani Makahili, I saw that he won the starting right guard position. I know that we saw, I think it was Tavake.
Tui
Kolavatu. We're over the course of the season, some of these names are going to come to me.
Yeah, we're going to get much better,
more gracefully. But they were sort of trading reps from what we picked up on in practice. Looks like Alani locked down that spot based off this chart, which I'm happy about. I think he's a big-bodied dude, absolutely massive human being. With the opponents that we're going to be up against in the Big Ten, I think having some meat on the interior parts of UCLA's offensive line is a good thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I was just looking at this depth chart right now. Makahili is about 3 inches shorter, but about 60 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe.
Which is, obviously what they're putting out, so I don't know how true it is, but from what we saw at the practices we went to, he's a big fella.
And my only worry with Alani is I don't know how often, I would imagine a lot how often Eric Bieniemy plans to run, counter plays, like things of that nature, where you're going to have your guard pulling, which is a pretty, basic part of any offense. So to see a guy of that size, he didn't look too mobile in practice, although, I tried to watch as much as I could, but just given the guy's size, I'd be surprised if he'd be super effective at pulling and really kind of allowing the timing of those types of plays to work out. But this is pure speculation, man. We'll see how it works out on Saturday.
Yeah. Keon, I want to give you a shout, man. You were all over Quasi Gilmer, right?
Yeah.
He's the only true freshman on this 2-man depth chart across the board that I'm looking at. So,
he's a Valley kid coming in. I mean, we mentioned it between the three of us again, but yeah, I'm super high on him. I think he's gonna have a good season. I think he's going to fly under the radar in this receiver room, so maybe he's going to get a little more space. And that kid is rapid quick from what we've seen at practice.
And he's gonna have a lot of good guys in front of him that he can learn from. And
exactly.
I think you'll be a really good Bruin for years to come. But in front of him too, at that Z position, Titus, right? He's got a homecoming this weekend. He's is it Iwa Beach, Hawaii? Is that how you pronounce it? Beach, Hawaii.
All I know is that he's playing his brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I totally forgot about that. But there's a couple of Bruins on this roster, right, heading back home that I think Foster mentioned in his press conference this morning.
Well, I guess that leads us into our opponent this Saturday, and that's going to be obviously the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, UCLA, heading to, what is it, Oahu?
It's Oahu, yeah.
Oahu.
Yep.
All-time series record against the Warriors is 4-0 in favor of the Bruins. Last time they met was in 2021 with UCLA winning 44-10 in Pasadena. Head coach is Timmy Chang, the former QB who lit it up in the 2000s, who I do remember, very vaguely, but I do remember watching him play as a young chap. This game will be played, I believe it's the T.C. Ching Athletic Center.
Yeah, yep. And did you guys watch the Delaware State game?
You both did.
Yeah,
I was
got to see a little bit.
I saw enough. Yeah. Okay, I saw enough to give an opening statement on Hawaii.
Great.
And that being UCLA, for me at least, has to win this game by 3 possessions or more, and I think that's pretty fair.
I agree. I mean, if I have to keep it in one sentence, I watched the Delaware State Hawaii game after every, we heard everything about Delaware State's flight, the time difference. Delaware was playing at midnight. The starting kickoff was midnight for their body clock after a 10-hour flight. And the line for UCLA right now is a 13.5-point favorite.
I think that line is insulting.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is now this is neither financial nor betting advice to anybody listening.
It's investment advice.
But hammer it.
But what I did was as Ross mentioned, I hammered that.
I mean, even if you just watch like 2 clips off a YouTube highlight tape, which was hard to find, by the way. This was like a very obscure, buried game with minimal production value. It felt like I was trying to watch like a high school playoff game, like D3 high school football playoffs.
Yeah.
That game being tied in the third quarter against that team, just visually how that team looked, with Hawaii stealing a touchdown with a punt
return, yeah.
I mean, that's really all I need to know. I mean, I know there's a lot of question marks with UCLA's defense. You have a brand new coaching staff. This is going to be the first game of the season. They're traveling. But just from like a resources perspective of like, we've been at the Wasserman the Wasserman Center a good amount this offseason. We see the size of our team. If that product cannot go into Hawaii, with all things considered, regardless, and beat them by 3 possessions, then I think we have a serious problem. And I don't want to jump to conclusions early.
Agree.
But boy.
No, I totally agree, Ross. And I mean, this game was 14-14 in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Like, there's in no world should UCLA, be competing with Hawaii. The week prior, Hawaii is up against an FCS team that was 1-10 last year, and it was 14-14 in the third quarter. I don't know if you guys saw, but Jay Toya got asked a question earlier this week at practice, sort of, a UCLA reporter hinting at the fact that they're going into a small place, might be a little sleepy, smaller environment that they're used to. And I just thought his answer was so baller. He just said, the field got 2 end zones. There's 2 end zones. Like, let's play ball.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that was pretty sweet and just like a good visual for, where their mind's at. And Ross, I know you mentioned a lot of questions on this defense, but he's going to be a guy that really needs to step up this year for the UCLA defense.
Absolutely. And look, I know that we're not being harsh, we're just being real about this Hawaii team. But having said that, like, you can only draw so many. I mean, I know they didn't play a great game and they didn't look very good. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you can only really learn so much when they're playing against an opponent that is just simply so like terrible and undersized. So trying to be, taking a step back, I thought that Ashlock, was he a slot receiver?
Yep.
He looked as advertised. That guy's quick.
Yeah.
I think if there's one interesting matchup that you're going to take from this game, I would be focusing on who in this UCLA secondary gets put on Pafili Ashlock, because I think that kind of might give you an idea of who is kind of being pointed to as the leader on this team from an on-the-field standpoint, and to see who can match up with him in man coverage, because that guy's quick.
Yeah, he went 5 receptions for 81 yards, which is not a ton of targets, obviously, for a wide receiver 1. But, I mean, those are some pretty big numbers if you go yards per catch.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, something to be aware of for the game.
And, I mean, they ran the ball more than I thought. I mean, I've been saying this entire offseason to you guys that this is the most imbalanced offense I've ever seen, that they simply can't run the ball. But, I mean, how many times did they run it? They ran it, I want to say, like 17 times.
Yeah, 10 of those were Landon Sims.
That's well, there's your asterisk.
The other thing to note too, I read after the game that I actually couldn't really even tell during the game is, I mean, the quarterback Braden Shager came on after an interview and said it was probably the windiest game he's ever played in. So he said, obviously that's not an excuse for 50% completion rate against a 1-10 FCS team, but it's definitely something to take into account. And I was seeing on Twitter, like, people talk about how, Hawaii wasn't going to show a lot, right? They were going to put a lot on film for UCLA to watch. But, I mean, I don't think there's any excuse for being 14-14 in the third quarter against a 1-10 FCS team.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I read so much about how, all these problems Delaware is going to have, being 1-10 the year before, FCS team, going into, okay, it's a group of 5, but it's Mountain West. Mountain West is generally okay. Hawaii's generally okay. Sure, it's windy. Both teams are playing in the same conditions, though. Hawaii came out as a 40-point favorite.
That was crazy. That's probably got to be the biggest spread in favor of Hawaii in program history, unless somebody can find a bigger one.
Yeah, and they were tied at one point in the game, which you mentioned, Kyle. Like, that's, I don't know, and I was
in the second half,
right?
In the second half,
and I was listening to another podcast. I think it was Unnecessary Roughness, where they kind of suggested that maybe they were kind of looking ahead to UCLA, which I think it could be a possible excuse, but I don't think there's really any legit. Like, if I'm a Hawaii fan, I'm fuming at this result.
Yeah, I was reading through some Hawaii forums online, and their fans. I mean, even you just go on their Twitter and like look through some comments on their Twitter channel, like people are like, that was pitiful. Like, what did I just watch? Like, that wasn't the offense that I saw last year. I mean, even though they put up 35 points, one obviously being a kick return, so really 4 touchdowns against a Delaware team, right? That was 1-10. We keep hitting on 1-10. But yeah, I totally agree.
Well, I think the cat is kind of out. That, I mean, there was always kind of questions on whether or not this passing game would be legit, because they've showed some promise just from numbers alone and some skill at the receiver level. Shager seemed to be a competent enough quarterback last year, but everyone's kind of known that this defense is bad, and they did bring back a lot of experience, but what does that mean when you give up over 35 points per game? I think it was last year. They lost 35-0 to San Jose State last year. So I think UCLA, it's just simply a matter of going on the road, taking care of business, setting the tone for what is really cool. I mean, they get a bye week going into a critical, very important Indiana game that has to be won. So I think this is if UCLA handles this game as they should, this is a bit of a blessing where they get basically a tune-up game. Going into a bye week allows them to have full prep for the Hoosiers coming to the Rose Bowl. Not to look ahead, but I'm just kind of calling it as I see it.
I wanted to ask the two of you, this is Coach Foster's first game as head coach of the UCLA Bruins. What are we looking from his perspective when we're just focusing, forget the team, we have all these expectations that we mentioned, but just from a coaching perspective, what are we expecting from Coach Foster? What do we want to see?
I want to see guys not out of position. I don't want to see confusion on the sidelines. I just want to see a cohesive operation from the top down. I think that UCLA's talent alone will allow them to run away with this one. But I just want there to be limited dumb mistakes, penalties, and just guys, substitutions. I want it to be a tight operation, because the biggest unknown about UCLA this year is its head coach. So seeing a tight operation, and then also seeing guys playing with some fire. I don't know. I've never been in the same room as Deshaun when given like a pregame speech. How hyped is this team going to be to start the season? I don't give a shit who the opponent is. This is the first game of the season in a hugely transformational year for UCLA. So if they can't get out there and fly around and play like their hair's on fire, then I would have a bit of concern about just a motivational aspect. But I would expect Deshaun, the players love him, to get these dudes fired up. So that's what I'm looking for, really.
I would love to be in that locker room at the game's at 4:30. I'd love to be in that locker room at 4:20 Pacific time in Hawaii, hearing what Deshaun has to say. But I think it's such a important game to come out and just set the tone to let the others. I mean, everyone else, all the other 14 teams outside of UCLA, USC, Washington, Oregon, all those fans, they're going to be looking at these four Washington, Oregon, UCLA, SC. They're going to be looking at our games to see who are these guys, right? And I think it's important for us to come out, set the tone, and just start off the season with a little bit of confidence, a little bit of swagger, and really put the beat down on the team, and take that into an Indiana game, and let Indiana know, hey, you're coming to the Rose Bowl, and we just beat the crap out of Hawaii. We're here. We're UCLA Bruins, and we're here. So I think that's what I want to see most out of the game. I think just really, really important to really set the tone for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I echo what both of you guys said, but I just wanted to bring out a specific example that happened in the Florida State-Georgia Tech game. That opening drive by Florida State, they went 8 plays down the field, touchdown in, 2 minutes. It was one of the most efficient drives that I've seen in a game that ended up being terrible for the rest of the game. If UCLA has an opening drive that's mirrors something like that against Hawaii, I am in the watch party. I am going crazy.
Piss hot. Boiling hot piss.
Yeah.
But that's what I expect. Maybe not at 8 plays, but I expect I think there is a significant amount of importance on that opening drive of the season.
You know what I would love to hammer? UCLA first half spread. Whatever that is, I think that's my bet for the weekend.
So
Kyle's pick.
in my initial opening statement on Hawaii, I mentioned that I expect them to win by at least 3 possessions, obviously at the end of the game. What I wanted to say is I would like to see UCLA be ahead 3 possessions by half. Now, yeah. I didn't say that because it's the first game of the year, and there's going to be kinks. It's an entirely new coaching staff. I mean, you mentioned, Keon, that Florida State looked like the Chiefs on their opening possession of the game, and then Georgia Tech got their shit together on defense and completely turned the game around and ended up winning the thing. So I don't want to put too much weight in the first 2 quarters, but it would be nice to come out swinging and make a statement here, because you don't really get too many opportunities as a brand new team against an opponent that you absolutely should beat. So if you come out and put an absolute whooping on a team in the first half, I think that's just awesome to watch as a Bruin fan.
Yeah, I agree. Last time UCLA played at Hawaii, 1939.
That's crazy.
In the Pineapple Bowl.
The Pineapple Bowl?
I was hoping you would have that.
You actually,
Ross, I thought you were going to say you were there.
Ross just pulled it up. Just off the dome because we're not recording this one on video. I just want everybody to know that Kyle just mentioned a game from 1939. And Kyle's like, yeah, the Pineapple Bowl. You guys he's gaslighting us into not knowing that game.
Touchdowns are worth like 4 points or something.
Do you know the attendance as well?
Do you have it up? Can I guess it?
No, I don't have it up. I don't know if they have attendance for 1939.
Hey, 1939, available. That's like middle of World War II, right?
No, that was before. Well, that's like
that's when U.S. isn't involved.
No, that's when like Europe just got involved.
It's just going into.
Should we make this a history?
I was going to say Hawaii right before we entered World War II.
What are your guys'
might not be the best?
What are your guys' thoughts on the upcoming election? Absolutely not.
I think we should all get a final score prediction and see who gets closest.
All right. I'll go first. 38-21 UCLA. They're just going to clear that 3-possession prediction that I've got. And those touchdowns come in overtime for Hawaii. Sorry. in garbage time for Hawaii.
Fair. I have 38 as well, but I have 38-14. I think Hawaii, watching them and their quarterback, there was a lot of pressure on the quarterback that came from a very not good Delaware State team. I think UCLA's defense is going to get to Braden Shager, put a lot of pressure. He might throw up a couple picks. I think he's going to get hit a lot, or at least I hope all of that. But I do think it's going to be 38-14. I think we comfortably win, covering that spread. And we have a really good time at a certain watch party.
I didn't, before we get to the watch party and Kyle's prediction, I did not watch enough of that game to see that Braden Traeger indeed got rushed a lot.
He went 17 for 34.
Okay.
For 200 yards.
Delaware State had a guy who, playing edge rush, 6'4", 225 pounds. If these dudes got to the quarterback, I don't care what our issues are at edge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Devin IPU for UCLA is 6'5", 270 pounds. That's all I really need to hear.
No, I expect us to manhandle.
That's a quarterback playing edge rush there, and if they're getting the quarterback, then oh boy.
My favorite thing I think about this game, I'll give my prediction here in a second. I generally don't have any doubts about the offense going into this year. Obviously, I think we're very high on the offense. I think the general questions rely around the defense, and I don't think the defense needs to be perfect, from the get-go. I think that's the biggest thing that I like about this matchup against Hawaii is, the offense is going to put up points. I have our offense putting up 44 points in this game, the exact amount of points that we put up the last time we were in Hawaii. Or no, the last time, we played Hawaii in the Rose Bowl. But I think the defense, there's going to be some kinks to, work out. I think Hawaii gets 3 touchdowns, maybe a field goal. So I think the game 44-24, that's going to be my prediction. But I think it'll be, a good exercise for the defense and being able to, get a bye week after that, watch some film, and then be more prepared for Indiana.
Hammer that UCLA spread.
I'm happy with all 3 of those predictions, man. Any one of those 3, and I'll be content with.
Other good thing to shout out today on today's episode, UCLA basketball coming out with their non-conference schedule today. Obviously going to be a really exciting year in Westwood for Mick Cronin, but couple good non-conference games, North Carolina and Madison Square Garden. Arizona, the Wildcats out in Phoenix at a neutral site, and then obviously Gonzaga at the new Intuit Dome.
Neutral site in Phoenix. No, it is. It is actually a neutral site, but like it's not really a neutral site. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if we were playing in Vegas or LA, I mean, I hate Wildcat fans, but they just show out, man. I mean, me and Ross were out there for the Pac-12 championship game a couple years ago, and we were dominated.
I will say this because they do come to LA, I think, next year at the Intuit Dome. If UCLA fans allow Arizona fans to be the majority in attendance at that game, I'm going to go on the next episode of the podcast will be just me screaming and ranting the entire time and scolding people that I think may or may not be listening.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, it's
show up.
I think show up. I mean, show up for everything, right? UCLA football, UCLA basketball, show up for
our watch parties.
Anything UCLA. Yeah,
our watch
party.
I also, speaking of other sports, not football, really quick, wanted to shout out the UCLA women's soccer team. I think them and men's soccer are the only sports that have officially started their seasons. Women's soccer, who has a dear place in my heart. I used to work for them for a few years. They started their season 4-0 and have not conceded a goal. And they also they just got the Big Ten Player of the Week in Lily Reel. So that's the first UCLA athlete to be a Big Ten Player of the Week across any sport. So shout out Lily and shout out the Lady Bruins over there.
Love to hear all that. All right, well, that's all we've got in store for today. Wanted to thank you guys again for tuning in. Hopefully the next time you hear from us next week will be a recap of a monster Bruin win, and we'll be previewing, I guess, a bye week. So, yeah, we're looking forward to it.
All right.
Thanks, boys.
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins.